Whispers of the autumn wind. The small town of Elmridge was always quiet in the fall. Maple trees turned to gold, the streets smelled of cinnamon and dry leaves, and the air carried a gentle melancholy. It was the kind of town where everyone knew each other, and where stories of love quietly blossomed without fanfare. Claire Bennet had lived in Elmridge all her life. She was a librarian, soft-spoken and dreamy, often lost between pages of old poetry and romance novels. She believed in love the way one believes in the changing seasons, certain it would come, eventually, but never rushing it. She had her routine, opening the library at 8 a.m., preparing a pot of tea, and watching the world drift by through tall glass windows. Then came Elias Hart. He wasn't from Elmridge. He arrived in early October, renting the little cottage near the edge of the woods. He was quiet, with a kind face and a past he didn't speak of. Every morning, he'd come to the library and sit by the window with a notebook, writing for hours without interruption. Claire noticed him instantly. Not because he was striking, though he was, but because of the sadness in his eyes. A kind of quiet longing, as if he were waiting for something he thought he'd lost forever. For weeks, they didn't speak. Until one rainy afternoon, Claire walked over and gently placed a worn copy of Leaves of Grass on his table. "You seem like someone who'd enjoy Whitman," she said. Elias looked up, surprised by her voice. Then he smiled, a real, soft smile. "I used to read him aloud. Years ago. To someone special?" He hesitated, then nodded. Claire didn't ask more. She simply said, "Sometimes, poems speak when we can't." That day marked the beginning. They started talking, first about books, then about life. Claire learned he was a composer, once renowned in New York, but who hadn't written a note in 3 years. He lost someone, his fiancée, Anna, in an accident. After that, the music stopped. Claire didn't try to heal him. She just sat with him. Listened. Shared quiet mornings and warm cups of tea. Days grew colder, and so did their silences, comfortable now, like an old song played in the background. One evening in mid-November, as golden leaves swirled outside, Elias asked, "Do you believe people can love twice?" Claire looked at him for a long moment. "I believe hearts break. But they also mend, slowly, like the seasons change." He reached for her hand then. Not desperately. Not like someone trying to forget. But like someone ready to begin again. That winter, Elias started composing once more. A piece called Claire's Waltz. It was gentle, filled with longing and hope, and played for the first time in the town's tiny concert hall in spring, when the flowers returned and so did love. They never rushed things. Love grew between them not like a wildfire, but like ivy, steady, winding, beautiful. And every autumn after that, they sat together by the library window, reading poetry as the wind whispered promises only they understood. Beneath the lantern sky, in a quiet town nestled between the sea and the mountains, there lived a girl named Alara. She ran a tiny bookshop on the corner of a cobblestone street, where the scent of old pages and jasmine tea always lingered in the air. Alara was known for her soft smile, her love for poetry, and the way she whispered to books like they were her dearest friends. One rainy autumn evening, a man named Theo stepped into her shop. He was tall, with thoughtful eyes and hands that looked like they'd built ships or written symphonies. He wasn't from the town, his coat was wet with sea spray, and his eyes held the melancholy of a man who had wandered too far and long. Theo was a photographer, traveling from coast to coast, searching not just for beauty but for meaning. He was drawn into Alara's shop by the warm glow and the way the light fell on the window display of love poems. He asked for a book about the sea, but stayed for her stories. Every day after that, Theo would return. Some days, they barely spoke, sitting together in the quiet hum of pages turning. Other days, they laughed like old friends, as if the universe had whispered secrets into their ears while they slept. He brought her photos of forgotten harbors and sunrises over misty cliffs. She read him poetry under the golden lanterns hanging from the beams. As weeks turned into months, something tender bloomed between them, something fragile, like the petals of a flower opening in winter. They would walk along the shore in silence, their hands brushing, never quite holding. And yet, in those silences, there was a language more honest than words. One night, during the town's lantern festival, Alara and Theo stood by the water, holding a paper lantern together. It bore no wish, no name, only a single line she had written. Come back to me if the wind forgets your name. They let it go, watching it rise into the velvet sky, joining 1,000 others, glowing like stars that had fallen just to rise again. That night, he kissed her for the first time beneath the lantern sky. It was not a grand moment, it was quiet, slow, and infinite. But as all travelers must, Theo had to leave. He promised to return in spring, when the cherry blossoms would bloom. Alara waited, day after day, heart quietly hopeful. Spring came, with its pink skies and warm winds, but Theo did not. Seasons passed. She kept the bookshop open, kept her smile soft, kept his memory like a pressed flower in her heart. Letters came, once in a while, short, distant, but filled with longing. Then, one rainy evening a year later, as Alara was closing the shop, a man stood by the door. His coat was soaked, his hands trembling. Theo. No words were needed. He stepped inside, dropped his suitcase, and held her as if the whole world had been a storm, and she was the shore he finally reached. I tried to forget you, he whispered. But everything I saw reminded me of you. I never forgot you, she said. You were always here. In every poem. In every lantern. From then on, Theo stayed. They grew old together among books and light, with tea and poems and photographs hung on the walls of their home. And each year, during the Lantern Festival, they lit one together, never with a wish, but always with gratitude. For some loves are not loud or wild. Some are gentle, growing like ivy, wrapping around hearts slowly, beautifully. And under the lantern sky, they loved, quietly, endlessly.